He is called the hidden whisperer, the primordial source of sorrow. In Islamic tradition, the figure of the devil differs significantly from his Christian counterpart. He is not a fallen angel waging a celestial war, nor does he rival the divine for dominion over humanity. Instead, he plays a more subtle role, tempting, deceiving, and testing people from the shadows. For centuries, scholars, mystics, and theologians have pondered his nature and the lessons concealed within his story. One of his names is shayatin, meaning the devil or Satan. He is also called al-adu, literally the adversary, a term familiar as the Hebrew origin of Satan. Yet the Quran gives him a specific name, Iblis. So who is Iblis? What is his origin, and what does he represent? Why is he so obsessed with leading people astray? Islamic tradition is incredibly diverse. Today, nearly 2 billion Muslims follow it. But there is broad agreement that Iblis is a corrupting force who seduces sinners and lures them into Jahannam, or hell. He incites those he can deceive toward wicked behavior, particularly pride, envy, lust, gluttony, greed, and hatred. According to tradition, he may be invisible or assume any human form, except that of the Prophet Muhammad. He can appear in dreams or enter human bodies like an illness. He is said to distract worshippers during prayer, causing them to forget whether they have prayed or confusing their words so their prayer is invalidated. One of his signature actions is whispering sinful suggestions into the ears of anyone willing to listen. Indeed, Arabic even has a word for his whisper, waswasa, which itself sounds like a hushed murmur. A hadith attributed to the Prophet Muhammad vividly illustrates how far Iblis will go to disrupt prayer. It recounts a man who accidentally overslept the morning prayer. The Prophet said, "Shaitan urinated in his ears." In other words, missing prayer wasn't merely oversleeping. It was portrayed as the result of satanic interference. To be clear, most Muslims understand this statement metaphorically. Iblis also commands lesser devils, known as shayatin. But these are not the red-skinned, horned, pitchfork-wielding demons of pop culture. In fact, the Quran explicitly states that shayatin can be either humans or jinn, supernatural beings capable of both good and evil. Thus, devils are not seen as a distinct category in Islamic tradition. Rather, it is opposition to Islam that makes humans or jinn demonic. Openly condemning and rejecting Iblis is a key marker of faith for many Muslims. One way they do this is through ta'awud, a short prayer recited before reading the Quran or beginning an important task. I seek refuge in God from the devil. Another example occurs during the hajj, the pilgrimage every able Muslim must perform at least once in their lifetime. One ritual involves stoning the devil, literally throwing pebbles at 3 stone pillars in the valley of Mina. This reenacts the story of the prophet Abraham, according to Islamic tradition. When Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son Ishmael, Iblis tried to dissuade him. Each time Iblis appeared, Abraham threw stones at him until he vanished into the earth. Like in Christian tradition, Iblis is identified as the one who tempted Adam and Eve out of paradise, though not as a serpent. Consider, for instance, a 14th century depiction of Adam and Eve in the garden, where Iblis appears as an old man. This anthropomorphic portrayal aligns with how many Muslims broadly understand Iblis. Unlike Christianity, where Satan is often described as a fallen angel, most Muslims today believe Iblis was never an angel at all. Instead, he is typically regarded as one of the jinn, a completely different kind of being, as previously mentioned. It's also crucial to note that Iblis is not seen as the ultimate source of evil in Islam. Though he tries to trick mortals into wrongdoing, he is not their cause. In fact, the Anak account of his fall implies that God grants him permission to tempt humanity. The story goes, when God created Adam from clay and breathed life into him, he gathered the angels and commanded them to prostrate before this new being. Iblis refused. When God asked why, he replied, "I am better than him. You created me from fire and him from clay." For this disobedience, God banished and cursed him. But before departing, Iblis requested a reprieve, permission to roam the earth until the day of resurrection, when all souls would be judged and sent either to paradise or hell. God granted this, and Iblis then declared his intent to mislead and corrupt all mortals except God's chosen servants. God affirmed this plan, stating that those who follow Iblis will join him in hell. Several key points emerge from this narrative. First, Iblis's defiance is not a grand military rebellion like the one John Milton describes in Paradise Lost, where Satan leads a heavenly army. Instead, it is a simple but principled refusal. He would not bow to Adam. Why were angels commanded to prostrate before a human? The Quran doesn't explicitly say, and Muslim theologians have debated this for centuries. Importantly, Iblis's disobedience isn't an attempt to rival God. It reflects his arrogance or stubbornness. Nor does he conceal his intent to lead humanity astray. God deliberately delays his punishment so he can fulfill this role. This reflects a core Quranic idea. Evil exists not because God is powerless to stop it, but because he permits it. As Surah 6112 states, "Thus have we made for every prophet enemies among the devils of mankind and jinn, who inspire one another with deceptive speech. But had your Lord willed, they would not have done it." Thus, Iblis is not portrayed as God's sworn enemy, nor does he claim equality with the Creator. Yet, despite these differences, the Islamic concept of Iblis is closely linked to the Satan of the Hebrew Bible and the Christian devil. Many scholars believe the name Iblis, unattested in any known source before Islam, may derive from the Greek diabolos, the root of devil, and diabolical, itself a direct translation of the Hebrew Satan. How diabolos became Iblis remains phonetically puzzling and is still debated. Other theories tie the name to Arabic roots, meaning despair or confusion. Although the story of Satan refusing to bow to Adam is absent from most Christian sources, strikingly similar versions appear in pre-Islamic texts. One example is the Syriac Christian Book of the Cave of Treasures, dated before the Quran. In it, God presents Adam in glorious form to the angels and commands them to bow. The prince of the lower order of angels, seeing Adam's greatness, envies him and refuses, telling his host, "You shall not bow to him. It is more fitting that you bow to me, for I am fire and spirit, not dust." For this, God casts him from heaven. A similar account appears in a 4th century Coptic text from Egypt. Archbishop Timothy of Alexandria describes God placing a crown on Adam's head and a scepter in his hand, then ordering the angels to bow. Satan refuses, declaring, "It is more fitting that this man come and bow to me, for I existed before he appeared." In this version, God commands the angels to strip and humiliate Satan before expelling him. Thus, the Quranic fall of Iblis closely mirrors several apocryphal Christian texts that circulated in the late antique Near East, depicting Satan as a proud being who refuses to honor Adam and is punished by God. These parallels suggest a shared conceptual foundation and show how the Quran engages with, adapts, and reinterprets earlier Near Eastern traditions within its own theological framework. As noted, most modern Muslims agree that Iblis was never an angel but belonged to the jinn. Today, angels and jinn are understood as distinct supernatural beings. Angels are obedient servants of God, often described as lacking free will. Jinn, by contrast, are unpredictable. They possess free will and can be either good or evil. The Quran quotes a group of jinn saying, "Among us are Muslims, those who submit to God, and among us are the unjust." Like humans, jinn exist in both righteous and wicked forms. They live alongside humanity but can remain invisible or take various shapes, including human form. However, early Islamic thought was not so uniform. In fact, the idea that Iblis was an angel enjoyed significant support during Islam's first few centuries. In the early 10th century, the renowned scholar Al-Tabari not only claimed Iblis was an angel, but cited traditions describing him as a kind of angelic general. According to these accounts, Iblis led heavenly armies against a group of jinn who had left paradise, settled on earth, and spread corruption. After defeating them, Iblis grew proud, his arrogance ultimately leading to his refusal to bow to Adam. Interestingly, some traditions cited by Al-Tabari reveal Iblis's name before his fall, Azazil, strikingly similar to Azazel, the name of a fallen angel associated with the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. The Watchers, among other sins, taught humanity warfare and sorcery. Thus, by the 10th century, traditions echoing the Book of Enoch had entered elite Muslim discourse, shaping interpretations of Iblis's backstory. These parallels reveal a broader interplay among Jewish, Christian, and early Islamic thought. How can Muslims disagree on whether Iblis was an angel or a jinn, given that his fall is repeatedly mentioned in the Quran? The answer lies in the Quran's ambiguous phrasing. Sometimes it seems to support the angelic view. Surah 15:31 states, "All the angels prostrated, except Iblis." Elsewhere, it implies he was a jinn. Surah 7:12 quotes him saying, "You created me from fire." And Surah 15:27 declares, "The jinn were created from scorching fire." Most decisively, Surah 18:50 says, "We said to the angels, prostrate to Adam. They prostrated, except Iblis. He was of the jinn and disobeyed the command of his Lord." What's going on here? The first part seems to include him among the angels. The second clearly identifies him as a jinn. Supporters of the jinn view point to "he was of the jinn" as conclusive. They rightly note that the earlier phrase doesn't explicitly state he was an angel. Consider, the principal told the students to raise their hands. All did, except the teacher. Clearly, the teacher isn't a student. Similarly, Iblis may have been present with angels without being one. According to this reading, he was a pious jinn who once held a place in the heavenly assembly but remained fundamentally different, a jinn, not an angel. Some traditions even claim he was captured by angels in an earlier celestial war and raised among them, yet never became one of them. But proponents of the angelic view offer another interpretation. The Arabic word for paradise is Jannah, and some early theologians, including the 10th century jurist al-Ashari, argued that he was of the jinn actually meant he was of Jannah, i.e., of heavenly origin, unlike Adam, who was made from earthly clay. So, who is right? By modern consensus, Iblis is a jinn, not an angel. Yet, what if both sides were partially correct? Some early Islamic sources suggest angels and jinn weren't always seen as distinct. Al-Tabari cites 9th century traditions describing jinn as a type of angel. Iblis belonged to a tribal group of angels called jinn, those created from fire. Another states, the angels who guarded paradise were called jinn. Conversely, the 9th century scholar Al-Jahis classified jinn into 3 types: evil shayatin, powerful ifrits, and pure jinn, like angels. This indicates that in early Islam, at least some Muslims saw Iblis as both angel and jinn, though this view is no longer mainstream. For nearly 1400 years, Muslim mystics, intellectuals, and artists have offered new and sometimes startling interpretations of this story. The early Sufi mystic Mansur al-Hallaj, for instance, saw Iblis's fall not as a tale of pride, but of devotion. In his view, Iblis refused to bow to Adam not out of arrogance, but out of absolute loyalty to God. Central to Islam is uncompromising monotheism. Only God is divine, and only God may be worshipped. Al-Hallaj argued that Iblis' devotion was so pure that he could not bow to anyone else, even at the cost of disobeying God's command and being cast from heaven. Crucially, Al-Hallaj didn't claim the punishment was unjust, only that it was the price of his fidelity. This portrayal of Iblis as a tragic monotheist paved the way for later mystics like Ayn al-Qudat al-Hamadani, who suggested that Iblis and his devils serve God's will by distinguishing the faithful from sinners, thus performing a sacred function. These are marginal views. Both Al-Hallaj and Al-Hamadani were executed for heresy, yet they reveal the rich diversity of mystical interpretations inspired by Iblis's story, used to explore free will and the problem of evil, theodicy. In Islam's the first 2 centuries, a group called the Jabriya posed a philosophical dilemma. If God is the source of all actions and nothing occurs without His will, did He not cause Iblis's disobedience? Though our knowledge of the Jabriya comes mostly from opponents, Islamic orthodoxy ultimately rejected their determinism, affirming that creatures possess enough free will for God to justly punish Iblis. God's permission of sin does not excuse the sinner, who remains fully responsible for choosing to sin. Beyond scholarly circles, Muslim folklore often linked Satan and his demons to artistic inspiration. Abu Nuwas, one of early Islam's greatest poets, frequently invoked Iblis as his muse, especially in verses celebrating wine, revelry, and forbidden love. When my beloved shunned me and gave me no word, I called upon Iblis and wept in despair. Obey your uncle Iblis. It is your religious duty, and perfect your unbelief. Commit no small sins. If you must sin, make it a great one. Iblis is also portrayed as a master musician who grants supernatural skill to performers. In 1001 Nights, legends tell of Ibrahim al-Mosili, a musical genius said to have learned directly from Iblis. This link between devils and artistic inspiration in Arab folklore has ancient roots. Like the Greek daimones, ambiguous spirits who inspired creativity, pre-Islamic Arabs saw jinn or shayatin as sources of poetic inspiration. The Qur'an repeatedly emphasizes that Muhammad was not a poet, and that his revelations were not poetry. Surah 36:69 states, "We did not teach him poetry, nor does it befit him. This is nothing but a reminder and a clear Qur'an." Such verses were widely understood to distinguish divine revelation from demonic inspiration, a crucial distinction in the Prophet's time. Today, Iblis remains a symbol of corruption, temptation, and sin. Yet, as with all religious figures, interpretations vary. For over a millennium, Iblis has embodied the tension between free will and divine command, between arrogance and devotion, rebellion and submission. And though he may be one of Islam's most infamous supernatural beings, he is far from the only one. As noted, Iblis is a jinn, not a fallen angel, but something entirely different. invisible, unpredictable beings capable of inspiring poetry as easily as instilling fear.